to episode 7 of the Cozy Moth Knits podcast. My name is Caitlin, and this is a podcast dedicated to all my knitting endeavors and showing you all how my knitting skills and progress is coming along. And we just get to know each other here, and we like to encourage each other in our own little knitting journeys. And you're just coming along for the ride, right? So if you're not a subscriber already, hit the subscribe button. If you want to continue to see me going forward, if this is your first time watching, hi. But if you've been watching for a while and you haven't subscribed, why not subscribe? You get to keep up with every time I post a podcast every other Sunday. That way you can keep up to date with all the Cozy Moth Knits news. And if you're a first time watcher, I hope you watch through the whole thing and maybe you like what you see, and then hit subscribe. This isn't the only place where I can be found. I'm also the Cozy Moth Knits on Instagram and Cozy Moth Knits on Ravelry. I'm not as active on Ravelry as I am on Instagram. On Instagram, I try to respond to DMs. I just post more there because I think it's more user-friendly than Ravelry, not just from the drama with Ravelry earlier this year in terms of user accessibility, but just like there isn't a mobile or a nice mobile app for Ravelry, where Instagram, it's all on my phone, it's super easy. Ravelry, I have to pull out my laptop, and it's not, like I said, it's not as intuitive as Instagram. So while I am on Ravelry, it's not as often as Instagram. So again, if you're interested, give me a follow on Instagram as a Cozy Moth Knits, or on Ravelry, or on Ravelry as Cozy Moth Knits over there. So welcome. It is the day after Thanksgiving, the day that I'm filming this, and I'm still recovering from my food coma. It was a lovely day yesterday. I hosted Thanksgiving with just my immediate family. My parents and my siblings all came over to our home, and we had a nice dinner. I made a turkey and some of our usual sides that we have. My little sister made a pumpkin pie. It was just a lovely time, and it was nice to have everyone together just to relax. Very limited conversations about the pandemic and politics, which is very nice. I decorated my home for Christmas yesterday. I'll probably post a little opener to show you like the Christmas corner that I put up in my living room. The majority of my second floor is decorated. My kitchen and I live in a townhome, so you come in on the first floor, it's kind of like a little foyer. And then you go into a back room, which is like, we call our basement, but we're using it as like a storage room right now. But it's like a little family room, but we just didn't really use it as a family room, so we're putting some stuff in there. And then you go up a flight of stairs, and it's open, and there's a living room and a kitchen all together. So that's the floor that I mainly focus on with Christmas, because that's where we spend most of our time. And then there's a third floor, which is where all the bedrooms are. And I did decorate a little bit here, but I'll go a little bit further into that later. Apologies if you hear my dog crying. Obviously I'm in a different setup. So right behind the camera is the door. The door is open, but for some reason my big dog doesn't want to come in the room. I don't know why, but she's gonna cry because she's a diva and she's not getting the attention she thinks she deserves. So she's gonna so if you hear a crying noise, it's my dog, and it's not because I'm ignoring her or that she needs anything, it's just that she's a diva. So but yeah, have you guys decorated for Christmas yet? Let me know. I know, like I mentioned in my last podcast, like my mom had decorated her home for Christmas very early. Were you guys early to setting up your Christmas stuff, or have you not set up anything yet? Have you thought like, let's just enjoy Thanksgiving while we can, and I'm not gonna think about Christmas until December? Let me know in the comments. I would like to know what everyone's thoughts are on, and not just Christmas, just the holidays in general, or if you don't celebrate any of the holidays in December, do you still like to get festive, whether in your home or go to parties or participate in a gift exchange or anything, you know, let me know. I'm very interested to find out what you guys like to do around the holidays. So yeah, like I said, I just spilled tea on myself. Well, today's tea, I have it in my little llama mug. My aunt gave me this mug. Growing up, it's kind of funny. Growing up, one of my aunt's favorite movies was The Emperor's New Groove. And so, like, collectively as our family, our favorite Disney movie is Emperor's New Groove. So anything that has to do with llamas, very dear to us. Llamas and alpacas, you know, we're always sharing, you know, llama memes and stuff with each other. You know, we're always exchanging lines from the movie. It's just a classic. So yeah, I spilled the tea that is in this llama mug on my lap. It is what it is. Today I am drinking, what was it? Double bergamot Earl Grey tea, and a very dear friend of mine gifted me that tea, and she was like, I don't know if you like bergamot, and I'm like, I love it. So it ended up being perfect. So I'm enjoying that right now. I already had a cup of coffee today. It's kind of a tradition with my sisters. The day after Thanksgiving, we drive up. We live in northern Delaware. So we drive up to Oxford, Pennsylvania, which is right above Maryland. Like the northeastern corner of Maryland is right above there. And there's a little coffee shop called Holy Grounds. I'm actually wearing one of their sweaters. Called Holy Grounds, and we are somewhat connected. It's kind of like a weird connection to the owners of the coffee shop. It's run by a family, like a friend of my parents. He's friends with the owners, so like our paths cross from time to time. So every year after Thanksgiving, it's just like been a tradition with my sisters and I to drive up, get a cup of coffee, support the small business, and drive back down. And it's just the sweetest little coffee shop. So if you happen to be in the area, if you know where Oxford, PA is, or can drive to Oxford, highly recommend. It is very sweet. Their interior decorating is so comfy cozy. They decorated for Christmas already. So it's adorable. I love it. And the staff there is super nice. We went there last year on Small Business Saturday, and one of the employees was dressed up as Buddy the Elf from Elf, and they had a sign out front that said "World's Best Cup of Coffee." So like every 10 minutes or so, like the guy dressed as Buddy the Elf would run in and did, "You did it! Congratulations! World's Best Cup of Coffee!" and then like run out, and it was just so sweet. And oh, here comes Blue. It was very sweet and a fun way to like engage with, you know, the community. Oh, there's a nose. There's a nose. What? So yeah, again, if you're close to Oxford or just want to take a trip out there, there's cute little antique stores and boutiques there too. It's close enough to like Kennett Square if you want to go to Longwood Gardens, or it's close enough to enough places that you could make a trip, a day trip of it. But yeah, so just supporting a small business. So yeah, this is my second dose of caffeine today is what I was getting at. I had a peppermint mocha this morning at Holy Grounds, and now I'm just settling with tea. I dressed a little bit differently today because I just finished watching Amy Beth of the Fat Squirrel Speaks podcast. I watched her latest podcast, and she was wearing a like a crew neck, like that's a crew neck sweater, and one of her Andrea Mowry shawls, and I thought that looked so cute and so comfy cozy, so I emulate her by dressing similarly. And this is my Boneyard Shawl, patterns by Stephen West, and the colorway of this pattern, of this color, this is Bumblebee Acres, of course, and I believe this is the Frodo colorway. And that's my other dog crying, I'm sorry. The Frodo colorway. Right? No. Yes. It was either Frodo or Bilbo. One of those. One of the O's. One of the... I'm sorry, I don't remember it. I don't think either of the colors are up on their website anyway. At least I don't think so last time I checked. But yes, that's the shawl that I'm wearing today. And I guess we will just get into my knitting projects. I don't have a lot for you today. Put this down. Yeah, I don't have a lot for you today. My mind has been focused really on 2 projects past 2 weeks. Well, the first one, I guess, a finished object, excuse me, the first finished object that I finished isn't here. And it was the stocking that was commissioned, that someone had commissioned me to make. The story is, if you haven't seen the past podcasts, that my mom was on one of my local Facebook sites, or the local Facebook sites for the city or the town that I live in, and someone had asked if anyone, you know, out there knew how to knit, because someone in their family normally makes stockings for everyone in the family. Like if a new baby comes into the family, then they'll make them a stocking. But for some reason, the person who makes the stocking like couldn't do it this year for some reason. They didn't really go into details. So they were looking for someone to knit them a, I just realized my tea is off center. That's gonna annoy a lot of people. Sorry. Maybe? Yeah. So my mom sent me a screenshot of the post, and so I reached out to the woman and said, you know, I can knit. And this was back in September. Like, I'll knit you a stocking, like, thinking, you know, it's just a big sock, right? It's not that, it shouldn't be that hard to do. It proved to be a little bit of a challenge, but it was a challenge in a good way. The stocking was knit in all acrylic yarn. It was just the standard red, white, and green colors. The color work was easy for the most part. I had to figure out some certain things, because like the first row or the first color block with the color work, you could see some of the carried floats, so I had to figure out a way for the next few colors to make sure that you didn't really see the floats, like if you were looking for them. So I'd figured that out, and then on top of that, I had to sew on some sequins, and you know, a jingle bell and a bow, and I'm not the best at sewing, but I was able to get it done, thankfully, and the woman really, I gave it to her last Sunday. So it took me some time. I promised her it was going to be done by Thanksgiving, and it was. So I gave it to her last Sunday, and she really liked it, and she was very sweet and about the whole thing. And she was like, you know, how can I promote you? How can I promote you? And I'm not a business. I was just, you know, like, I don't like like I don't make things to give to like I don't make things with the intention of like selling them. You know, I know like a lot of people do that. I know a lot of people have Etsy shops where they'll make like hats or, you know, whatever, then they'll sell them. You know, but like that's just not something I do. Most of the things I knit are for myself or for people that are very near and dear to my heart, you know, like my husband, my family. Because I guess I'm not confident enough in my own skills to say like, oh yeah, like this is fine. And then like in my head, I'm like, they're gonna see like that one little flaw that only I can see, you know? So she asked, she was like, how can I promote you? And I'm like, well, like, you don't really have to do that. Like, that's fine. Like, she's, you know, but it was very nice of her to do that. And I said, well, if like, I tend to go in that direction where I do make things for people and charge, you know, a fee, then I'll contact her and she'll be, you know, a reference or something. Moving on to to my next finished object. So this is a Christmas present for someone who I know is watching. So I'm going to speak directly to you, my Aunt Jen. Please skip to this time. That way you don't see what I've made for you. All right, I'll see you later. So my aunt asked me, because she's been faithfully watching my podcast, which is very sweet of her. So she had asked me to make her a pair of socks for Christmas. And I was planning on doing it anyway, but she had asked. And so I got to ask her shoe size and everything, her foot size. So I made her a pair of the Hermione's Everyday Socks. And here they are. They're not blocked, but I literally just finished them moments before I started the podcast. So here they are. I love this pattern so much. It's super easy, just knit and purl stitch to give you that that textured look. The colorway that I use is Bumblebee Acres in their squishy sock. I believe it was either their squishy sock or their butter sock, and this is their Rose Apothecary colorway, which is a Schitt's Creek colorway. I believe they might have a couple of Schitt's Creek colors. I think they brought them back. I don't know if they have them right now. They might have sold out by the time I post this because they're having a big sale on their website. But yeah, this is Rose Apothecary. And for the cuffs, heel and toe, I just used a Schackemeyer Regia Premium Yak, and this is just a gray. I think it's like gray in Norwegian, which I don't know. Oh, speaking of Norwegian, last week when I was talking about Hygge versus Hygge, the Hygge, so people do pronounce it Hygge. I wasn't crazy because I was watching Ina Knits in her month of Hygge, and she was calling it Hygge, but I've also heard people call it Hygge, so I wasn't going crazy. So now I know for a fact it's pronounced differently. So yeah, anyways, I highly recommend this pattern. It knits up very quickly. I used size 1 needles, 64 stitches, split up over 4 double pointed needles, simple knit 1, purl 1 cuff, and then a what's it called? Eye of Partridge heel. I think I called it like a pigeon eye eel or something like that in the past, but close enough, right? Yes, Eye of Partridge. Just love that slip stitch detail. It's the little things. So yeah, those are that. I still need to block them, but that's okay. I just have to steam them. I just take a wet towel and I lay it on top of the sock, and then I take my iron and I steam just to get all the stitches in place. I recommend that for socks especially because it's super quick, and that way you're not waiting hours or a day for your socks to dry. I got the blocker so that I could display my socks like this, not for blocking. But yeah, if you don't do that already, that's something I highly recommend. It's a real time saver. And again, recommend the Hermione's Everyday Socks. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. The pattern writer is Erica Luder. So yeah, if you have a last minute Christmas gift that you need to knit up or want to knit, I recommend them. They're very, very nice, super easy to make. That's my last finished object. Oh, and I also finished up the those Arne & Carlos Mette socks, but I think either during Vlogmas or during another podcast, I'm gonna go through all the socks that I made, all the Arne & Carlos pattern Christmas socks that I made, just to show you everything all at once. So moving on from finished objects, I only have one work in progress as of right now, and that is my Pajama Cardigan by Judy Jewell of the Autumn Acorn. And I'm enjoying it a lot so far. So since we last spoke, I finished the back panel of the cardigan. So let's see. Oh, here we go. No. So here it is. Has the ribbing, and then I love this pattern section. It's so easy to knit up, and like I said, I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait for everything to get put together. I finished this back section the day before Thanksgiving. I was like up late knitting it because I wanted to get it done before Thanksgiving. That was my goal, and I'm liking it a lot. And I'm liking this yarn, the Rosa Pomar Mungo, the recycled cotton and wool blend. It's nice, and Judy had said that it is tough on the fingers, and I do agree that it doesn't flow as smoothly. It's not as buttery as, like, you know, like a merino, obviously. So it can be a little tough on the fingers. Like, I was telling my husband that I've been knitting so much, like any free moment of time that I have, I'm knitting. So I've realized it's starting to take a toll on my body, and I didn't think I would ever be saying that I was sorry for my other dog crying. On Wednesday night, my wrist, like, it didn't hurt, it just felt really weak, and I felt a little bit of numbness, and it was from like the middle of my fingers down to my elbow. And I'm like, what is this? I'm like, what is going on? So I looked up the symptoms, and I believe it is carpal tunnel syndrome, which is funny because this is my left hand. My working hand is my right hand. I would think that I would have carpal tunnel in my right hand, not my left, but it was my left hand that was really, and it was just this hand. It was weird. All right, I got the little one. She got a haircut. So she's not as fluffy as she used to be, but she's still very cute. Right? Right? So anyway, with the carpal tunnel, didn't think that was something I was ever gonna have to deal with, but you hear about it all the time, right? And I'm sure some of you guys have dealt with it. So I just need to figure out a way to handle that. Like I said before, I work at a physical therapy clinic, so I can talk to them about exercises or whatever I need to do. So I started on the, I believe it's the left panel. So I'm not very far on it. I have my, what was it? My Woolen Forest Charm, or my Forest Charm by Woolen Forest stitch mark or progress keeper there. It's like a little rose gold, let's see, a rose gold pine cone. It's very cute. So yeah, that's really all I've been working on. Sorry if the lighting is off. I know the lighting is off because I realized I filmed that entire podcast and I didn't even mention the Cozy Acorn knit along at all. So I'm going back and mentioning it now. So I'm knitting up that Pajama Cardigan by Judy Jewell of the Autumn Acorn for the Cozy Acorn knit along. And we're just knitting up this cardigan just for the heck of it, for the fun of it. This is my first ever knit along, so I'm sorry. Like, just bear with me, basically. I'm still learning as I go along. So I originally said that this knit along was going to run from November 15th to December 31st of this year. So this back panel took me 2 weeks to do. This is a project that I'm only doing from home. I'm not bringing it in public. I'm just, because it's a larger pattern, I moved it out of a project bag to a project basket. So This is only something I'm doing from home when I have a couple hours at night to do. So because that section took me as long as it did, this is knitting up slower than I expected it to. And I'm normally a quick knitter. But yeah, so because I'm going slow, and I know a couple people have joined the knit along later than the 15th. And someone had said like, oh, I hope that I can finish it in time. I'm going to extend the deadline a month. I'm going to extend it to January 31st or January 30th. How many? 30th. January 30th I'm going to extend it to. That way we have plenty of time. We don't feel rushed. I thought that all my Christmas knitting was going to be done, but it's not. Other stuff has come up, which I took on voluntarily. So I won't have as much time to dedicate to this cardigan. So that's why I'm extending it a month. And if we finish it early, great. If we finish it a little bit later, that's fine. I'm doing this that way that way we don't feel pressured during the Christmas season to get this done as quickly as we can. I'd rather we take our time with it and make sure that it's perfect. And I'm sorry that I'm just realizing this now. But yeah, I hope that makes people feel better. Make sure you join the Ravelry group. I'll have it linked below. A few people have joined, and I'm already getting to see your guys' work in progress, and it all looks great, and it makes me happy to see. Soon I'll be announcing the prizes for the giveaway. Pardon me. 2 prizes for the giveaway. Some stuff Judy of the Autumn Acorn has donated, and another friend of mine, and I'll reveal that soon, just contacted me, and she said she wanted to dye up a skein or 2 of yarn for this giveaway specifically. So I'll be, as the podcasts come out, I'll be showing you those prizes, what you could potentially win, and talking about how I'm going to select the winners of the giveaway and so on. So I think that's all I have to say for the giveaway right now. I'll reiterate, as I tend to do. Deadline is extended to the end of January. Join the Ravelry group. If you put anything on Instagram, tag it with hashtag the Cozy Acorn Cow, and I'll be announcing the prizes soon, and just have fun with it. This is what it's about, right? We're having fun with this knit along. So I'll make sure we get back to the other video because it's starting to get darker as I speak. And so anyway, back to the regularly scheduled podcast. As of right now, I do plan on casting on another pair of socks and a hat and a little toy, and I'll show them to you as we go along, whether it be on the podcast. Ooh. What are you doing? Come on, back up. Don't hit the camera. So yeah, I'll show the progress on those either in podcast format or during Vlogmas, which I'm very excited to get started. Vlogmas. I've always watched Vlogmas vlogs, basically all through my YouTube experience, and I always enjoyed Vlogmas. I'm happy to be doing one of my own. So, and in the spirit, or while on the topic of Vlogmas, I have my advent calendar set up. This isn't all of it, well, because most of it is cropped out. But here, I'll show you some of it. So that's where it starts, and I put a little garland up there. Oh, I didn't even have this turned on the whole time. I knew I was forgetting something. Ugh. There we go. Nice little lights. So all my advent skeins, and then they threw in, it's my advent skeins from Bumblebee Acres. And they threw in a full skein for me to open on Christmas Day, which I'm super excited for. So Bumblebee Acres has a bunch of different advent themes this year. Sorry. And normally I don't go, So the theme that I picked was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. And normally I'm not a Harry Potter go-to sort of person, despite me making all these Harry Potter things for my family. It's not my favorite, but I appreciate it, obviously. But I picked this one because Prisoner of Azkaban is my favorite Harry Potter movie. It's very cozy to me. When I think Prisoner of Azkaban, I think back to when it first came out on DVD and we were in the middle of a snowstorm, and I remember watching it. It was dark and we could see the snow falling. As we were watching Prisoner of Azkaban, we could see the snow falling in our windows, and like that just gives me like cozy vibes. And we were all huddled up on the couch in our little blankets. I was like 12 at the time, I think, 11 or 12 when we watched this movie. And it was, come on, stop crying. Come on, you can do it. And it was just a lovely time. So Prisoner of Azkaban holds a special place in my heart. And last year, like, my family loves Harry Potter all times of the year, but especially during Christmas. And for last Christmas, we watched Prisoner of Azkaban before like all my dad's family came over, because normally in my house, Christmas morning it was reserved for us, and then Christmas night my dad's family comes over. So in between opening presents and having breakfast and stuff, we watched Prisoner of Azkaban. So that was why I picked this Advent. They had other Advents. They had, I think they had a Jane Austen, and then they had like another theme. Normally I'm a Jane Austen kind of girl. I do love me some Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility and all that. But I went for Harry Potter this year, so I'm excited to see how everything looks, and I'll show you during Vlogmas what each skein looks like. And if you just, I was about to say, if you decide to get an advent calendar next year, you know, do Bumblebee Acres, but they just announced during their last podcast that they believe they're not going to do advents next year, because it is a lot of work, I can imagine. But maybe this will encourage you to do another advent next year. I know there's so many other yarn dyers that do that, like Earl Grey Fiber Company and Stress Knits, and like, you know, so many of them do that. But I'm really excited for this. And I think with my advent skeins, I'm going to do the habitation throw, just like a little blanket, and like keep it in here. Because right now I have a little blanket on the edge of this bed. But I feel like the habitation throw would be, you know, a little bit something different. But we'll see. So yeah, that's the plan for Vlogmas. I hope that that's something that interests you, and maybe hopefully you'll watch that all through December. I'm gonna do weekly episodes. I think I'm gonna do like post one every Friday in December, up through, I think I'm gonna do through December 31st, maybe. What do you think? Is that a good idea? But we'll see how it goes. I do have a few things planned in December that hopefully will give us some good content, and hopefully you'll get to watch with me and enjoy. So before we end it, because I'm sorry I don't have much to show you today, but I do have a question that was posed to me. It was in one of the comments of my last podcast, and I told her I would answer it on the podcast. So I apologize if I butcher your username. It's Osakure Soap. That's OTSUKRE SOPE. So she writes, I've really been interested in doing color work more in my knitting, but I'm a relative beginner, and I don't have a quote-unquote stash collected of various colors. Any tips on how to get the different yarns that I would need without feeling as much like I broke the bank over a pair of socks? Also, any other tips for when to go cheaper with yarn or better to go with the high quality stuff? Where best to get that would also be appreciated. So, so let's start with the first section. Any tips on how to get different yarns I would need without feeling as much as though I broke the bank? Your local craft store is always a great resource. Your Michaels, your AC Moore, your Joann Fabrics, your Hobby Lobby. There's nothing wrong with any of those stores. I know like a lot of us love buying yarns from, you know, indie dyers and supporting small businesses. However, you know, a skein of stock yarn could run you anywhere between $20 and $32. You know, like that's a lot of money for a pair of socks. And if you get to heavier weight yarns, you know, a skein of sock yarn could be 400 yards, but a skein of DK weight could only be 200, and that costs you the same amount of money as a skein of sock yarn would, which fine, like, you know, indie dyers need to make their money, absolutely. You know, they put in a lot of work and effort into it, and they deserve the money that they price for their works of art. But yes, it can, like, it can feel like you break the bank sometimes. You know, like I mentioned in the past, the first sweater that I made cost me over $200. And that was on me. I decided to make a sweater that was held double fingering a mohair. So that's going to cost extra in the long run. And I did choose to go with an indie dyer, Ritual Dyes. But that's on me, you know, and sometimes sweaters can cost that amount, or it can cost more or less, but that doesn't always have to be the case. You can absolutely go to Michaels or Joann Fabrics and get yourself some different colored yarns for a lot cheaper. That's what I started when I was doing with a lot of my knitting. That's how I started. I went to my local Michaels and would pick out different yarns and practice color work that way. And there's nothing wrong with that, with going with the cheaper option, because knitting can be a expensive hobby, but it could also be a fairly cheap hobby, and that just depends on which direction you go. And we shouldn't put other knitters down and fiber artists if they decide to go the cheaper route versus the more expensive route, and vice versa. You don't, you know, go either way you want. You know, that's what's great about this hobby, is that there's so many different outlets we can take, that we don't have to, like we're not limited to only indie brand, or not limited to only indie dyers, and we're also not limited to only, you know, Michaels and Joann fabric yarns. So back to answering that question, definitely use, if you're practicing, if you're still getting the hang of it, go for, you know, your Michaels and your Joann Fabrics and Hobby Lobby, and go for it. It's very very cost effective. Like, that's how I started. I went to Michaels and picked up a few skeins, and I made a color work hat, and that was the first, you know, my first experience in color work. And it was I believe it was a wool and acrylic blend, because that's mostly what you're gonna get with the craft store yarn. It's going to be a lot of acrylic, which there's not anything wrong with that. It just depends on what you prefer, which kind of leads me into the second part of her question. Also, any other tips for when to go cheaper with yarn, or is it better to go more high quality stuff? I think back to an Arnett and Carlos video where they were talking about knitting sweaters. I can't remember which video it was, but I believe it was Carlos who said, you know, there's nothing wrong with knitting in acrylic, Acrylic is gonna act differently than wool, like when you're blocking it, when you're steaming it or whatever. Acrylic also isn't going to last as long as wool. An example he uses, like if you plan to knit a sweater that you want to be passed down from generation to generation, knit it in wool. But if you just want to knit yourself a sweater or whatever, then knit it in acrylic. Like, you know, but again, they're also like to each their own. Like you don't only have to knit in wool. And some of us don't have that option. Some of us are allergic to wool, or we're allergic to mohair, or we're allergic to alpaca. So sometimes the best option that we have is acrylic because it's synthetic. Again, nothing wrong with that. It just depends on what you prefer. So for me personally, I go with wool when I'm knitting socks and sweaters, or like stuff that I'm gonna like a garment. Because I just had that thing that Carlos said, you know, like if you want something that's gonna last a very long time, go with wool. So those are my go-to. But when it comes to things like hats and scarves and things like that, then absolutely go for acrylic. Unless you decide to go with wool, or vice versa. So it just depends on what you prefer. I feel like it's all relative. And again, like I mentioned earlier, that's what's great about this community and this hobby, is that it can go either way. You can either knit everything in high quality wool, or you can knit something expensive, high quality wool. I mean, only indie brands, and like that's all you knit. Or you can knit, you know, primarily in acrylic or stuff. And there's nothing wrong with either option, you know. So those are that's how I gauge it. If I am knitting a gift for someone, I would prefer to knit it in wool. Like I've talked about in the past, I made all those Harry Potter scarves for my family for Christmas, and they were all acrylic. They're soft, and they do the job, but it's different from like a pair of socks. Like, I don't know, like it's different. But gauge it how you want to gauge it. Don't feel bad, or don't feel like you're doing the wrong thing if you decide to go one way or the other. It's whatever you're comfortable with. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise, you know. Like I mentioned, this could be a really expensive hobby, or it could be a fairly cost-effective hobby, and you make that decision. And to answer the third part of her question, where do I suggest getting the more cost-effective yarn? Knit Picks is a really, really great option. Their skeins are normally smaller, but you can get a skein of like 200 yards worth of DK weight merino blend, and it's like $7. Compared if I get that same amount from an indie dyer, and that could be like I said before, anywhere between $20 and $30. Knit Picks is great. They have a lot of different blends. They have a lot of different weights of yarn. So go and explore that website. They're pretty great. I've knit a few things in Knit Picks yarn, and I don't have any complaints. Another great option is Love Crafts. That's mostly acrylic, or at least what I've looked for, it's mostly acrylic stuff, but it is still cost effective. And things arrive very quickly, at least they arrive quickly for me. And I know there's another one. I think those are the only two off the top of my head that I always suggest, besides, you know, your Michaels and your Joann's. Online knit picks and love crafts are great resources. Like I got all the yarn, these excuse me, yeah, like I got all this paint box yarn from Love Crafts. This is a GK, and it is 302 yards, and I think each skein was like $9. So, but again, that's everyone's preference, whatever you prefer. And you know, just do what makes you happy. Do what makes you, like, I don't want anyone to feel like they have to knit in strictly, you know, Schackenmeyer wool, because that could get expensive too. Like, I don't want you to leave your yarn store and like feel guilty. You know, I don't want you to have buyer's remorse when it comes to, you know, spending time with your hobby, you know. So I hope that answered your question. I hope I didn't go in too many circles. But yeah, that's what I suggest. So that is all I have to share with you today. I appreciate you stopping by and visiting with me. I love spending time with you guys. I hope everyone had a lovely Thanksgiving, and I hope everyone's excited to come into the holiday season over the next few weeks. And again, if, as like I mentioned before, if you don't celebrate any of these holidays, I hope that you can still find this time of the year enjoyable in some way. So I think the next time that we speak, I will be posting a Vlogmas video. That's my plan, at least. So I will see you then. But until then, enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe out there, keep knitting, and I will see you all later.